the rock layers and things of that nature, showing how the Earth itself shows a young Earth. Now we're going to get into the missing link. So evolutionists will argue that we came from chimps, and the farthest back ancestor that they say exists is a chimp-like creature that was what they call Lucy. And then they have all these, I don't know if anyone remembers during school. I remember during school we'd open up our book and they would have a picture of Lucy and say, we found a missing link. And then they would have a picture of this person or that person, or you would hear in the news, they just found a new archaeological dig that has fossils that is the missing link. But what ends up happening is they have all these big fanfares about when they find these new fossils, and then they put out all these articles about it, showing how it was a missing link and blah, 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 and this is how old it is. And but what they don't tell you is afterwards, all those articles get peer-reviewed, and then other scientists look at the findings, and in every case, they end up getting shown not to be what they say it is. So we're going to go through some of those. I picked out 4 of the stronger candidates that they have always used for the missing links. There's a lot more, and we'll get into some of that later when we get into this. But so defending the faith, Lucy, you got a lot of explaining to do. So Lucy was the name that they gave this these fossils they found, and they have, you go to museums all over the place, they will have something that looks like that displayed in, you know, a wax figure showing what Lucy looked like. And so we have Lucy, let me click over. We have Lucy, Java Man, Peking Man, and Neanderthals are the 4 that I picked that we're going to talk about today. So there's Lucy. So they found these fossils. They have all these pictures of her, all these rebuilding of models showing what she looks like. So these are some of the different representations that you see what Lucy looks like based off of the evidence that they found in the fossil records. How much do you think they actually found of Lucy to be able to depict what Lucy looks like? Does anyone guess? Huh? That's the amount of bones they found for Lucy. So one thing that you got to do when scientists come out with some big article about how they just discovered this one thing and it shows this, that, and the other is how much of that is actual science, that's measurable data that you can look at, and then how much of that is them telling a story based off of their worldview. And as we go through this, you'll see that a lot of it is them telling stories based off of the worldview and not the actual evidence. So that's how much bones they found of Lucy. So what do we know about Lucy? So this is what they show Lucy as standing upright, and said that she would have walked upright. However, what they do know of her is her spine comes in at an angle like a chimp. So if you walk upright like humans, where your spine comes into your skull matters, because if it comes in at an angle, you're going to be like this or like, so chimps, their skulls come in at an angle because when they're down on all fours, that's the natural position that your head would be in when you're on all fours. Your spine's coming in at that angle. That's the way from the bone fragments that they found of Lucy, that's what they could tell where the spine came in at. So she would have walked on all fours. Her wrists, the bones of the wrists, have a curve on it, and the wrist that allows it to lock into place. So when they're on all fours walking on their knuckles, the wrist locks in place and acts so it allows them to walk on all fours. Humans, that wrist bone is flat. It doesn't lock in place. It allows us to have better use of our wrists and shows that we don't walk on all fours. So, and then her hip bones, the funny thing about her hip bones is they say that her hip bones were disformed a little bit, so they actually broke her hip bones and put them back together, showing how it should have been. But even with the way that they reconstructed the hip bones of Lucy, they were still in a shape that would be remnant of something that was walking on all fours. So the thing that, especially that we can do with computers now, is we can put models together and show how the physics work on a design of something. So like they can look at the bone structure of an animal and see how it would walk based on where everything lines up. So Lucy's hips, she would have been walking on all four. And then one of the bones of fragments that they found of Lucy was actually a baboon bone. And a lot of times they'll find these missing links. They find them in like a bone pile. It'll just be a bunch of bones. And they'll pick these bones out and be like, oh, this is the missing link. And then come to find out, some of the bones that they picked out were ape or monkey bones. So it's like, how true do we really know? So, but why do they claim that Lucy walked upright? So they said that Lucy would walk upright sometimes, even though she had all of the features of four-legged chimp, or walked on all fours. So the reason why they say Lucy walked upright was because of footprints found in volcano ash that they dated to what they said was 3 million years ago, which is when they said Lucy lived. However, they never found any feet bones of Lucy. It was from like I think the femur up or something. They had no feet bones, so they had no idea what her foot actually would have looked like. They just saw footprints in ash, put it at around the same date, and said, oh, Lucy must have walked upright because we have these footprints. But what they don't realize is that actually those footprints are good evidence of the flood, because during the flood, the tectonic plates, they believe were sinking at a very fast rate. So the ocean crust was sinking underneath the continental crust at a super fast rate, and there would have been tons of volcanoes going around. So you would have had volcano ash all over the place while humans were trying to migrate to high ground. It would have been walking through ash that would have got covered up by the flood and then fossilized. So, but they're going to say that's 3 million years old, and the only thing around that could potentially have caused that was Lucy, even though they never saw her foot structure. So again, the footprints during the flood, there was volcano eruptions laying down ash layers and being covered and preserved as the flood raised. So we see Lucy doesn't add up to a missing link, that she really was just a chimp. There's nothing that they can show to prove that she was anything more than a chimp, just their worldview of they have to have a missing link, and that was one of the missing links. The next one we're going to look at is Java Man. That's actually one of the first missing link fossils that were found shortly after Darwin came out with his book, Origins of the Species. A scientist who was very much underneath Darwin's wing went out and found these bones, Java Man. Java Man was found on an island. So one of the things that is interesting about him being found on an island, that if it was an evolutionary step, that person or that evolutionary step, that ape man would have had to have the knowledge of sailing to be able to get to that island, to be able to populate the island. But so this is what Java Man, this is what they think Java Man looks like. So again, how many bones do you think they actually found of Java Man? That was the initial find. There was two teeth, a skull cap, and the leg bone. That was it. And they came up with, that's what Java Man looked like. One thing to remember is when you're looking at bones and fossils, cartilage does not fossilize. So any facial structure that you see that they are developing is purely artistic rendition, not actually knowing what the face might have looked like. They do this with dinosaurs too. They actually have a thing where they take what artists did to dinosaurs and then apply it to bones of modern animals like cats and dogs, and to show you like what they would look like. I didn't get a chance to get into the pictures, but it's really funny. So if you like look at a cat, it looks like completely crazy because they don't know how the muscle structure or the cartilage structure actually was on different animals when you're just looking at the bones. But that's what they think the Java Man looked like based off of that. So again, it's that story. You have to take the science and read through the story to figure out what's worldview and what's actual science. So what do we know about Java Man? Again, Java Man walked up straight, or upright. He did not walk on all fours. So they ended up finding more bones of Java Man on this island. So like when I use the term Lucy from now on, or if I use the term Java Man, it's actually to represent all the fossils that they have found of any certain species. So Java Man, they found more bones, but spinal cord goes in the same way it does with humans. So he would have been straight upright. The wrist bones would have been that flat, non-locking. So there was no actual transition between walking on all fours and walking upright. They just, so the bone structure of the skull fits within human bone structure found today. So you look at, they had like a high brow on their, so they would say, and then I think Java Man had a low chin or small chin. So they would say that was transitioning from a chimp to a human. But the facial features and structures of the bones found today are still found today. So Aborigines in Australia would have similar bone structure as Java Man, but they would say that was a transitioning. So we know Java Man, or they call Java Man Homo erectus, and the different sites that they found Homo erectus, they found boats, so they know how to use boats, build boats. They found seafaring navigation, so they knew how to use different compasses and stuff to navigate the waters. They found jewelry, tools, stone tools, so they had the knowledge of being able to build tools. They had language. They can make cordage, which is rope. They were able to make cordage and tie knots, and they were able to use fire and cook their food with fire. So what part of that would be a missing link or an ape lake? That's all. They actually even show cases of they had housing, like they built their own houses. They actually would have areas in their house dedicated to a job. So like a garage or like the warehouse you would have for a construction person, and organized religion. So they were like basically 100% human. They just used the bone structure of the skull to say, oh, it was kind of looks like it's in between apes and humans, so we're going to call it a missing link. So Java Man doesn't add up for the missing link. So the next one we're going to look at is the Peking Man. Peking Man was found in China, and again, he would be labeled as Homo erectus, so it would be the same classification as the Java Man. And this is what they think he looks like. That's the bone structure that they originally found. So they got that from that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he look Chinese?
Why doesn't he look Chinese?
I mean, if he's going to go that route.
So honestly, the way that the evolutionary story goes, Peking Man wouldn't have been what turned into the Chinese ethnical race. They would be basically subhumans that developed into what would then become Homo sapiens, which in their worldview came out of Africa, and then from Africa they moved into China. So that wouldn't be an actual human. That's in their mind. So, which again, this is all you see. So how would they even know if it looked like that or if it did look like a Chinese guy?
somewhere, how do they date them?
So a lot of the dating is in the way the dating process works. Like I was saying last week, they'll put things through different dating processes. So you have like carbon dating, you have there's I can't remember what, there's a bunch of different like ways that they can date things, but they will all come back with different numbers. So what tends to happen is they'll say for, let's say for Lucy, they'll say, well, that needs to be about 3 million years old because that's where we put that link in the evolutionary chain. So they'll find something near Lucy, date it, and they'll put it through 5 or 6 different dating processes, and then when they come up with one that matches about the time frame that they're looking for, they take that number.
It's almost like they create that stuff on their own.
A little bit, yes. So it's like, and there's a lot of different arguments about the dating system and how accurate they are or how well they can determine. There's a lot of assumptions that go into the dating processes. Like I said last week, they took rock from a lava flow. They've taken rocks from Mount St. Helens after Mount St. Helens blew up. They took lava flow from there, and they've taken lava flow from Hawaii, and they've taken like different samples from different parts of the lava flow from the top of the volcano down to the bottom, and went and got them all dated, knowing the date of the eruption and when that stone was created, and all of them came back with like crazy dates. And the closer, I think it was the closer to the mouth of the volcano was the older the stone was, and then as it came down, they were dating them younger, but it's just the range that they were giving was like millions of years old when they know it was only like 10 years old. So, but again, this is showing that when you're looking at scientific books and they're showing you things and making claims that sound like they're scientific and they've studied it, and a lot of times they're just taking something like this and then extrapolating that based on what because they need it to look kind of human, kind of ape, so they'll just play with the pictures to get it to where they want it. So with the Peking man, again, he's classified as a Homo erectus, just like Java. He used stone tools, made fires, had social behaviors like Java man. The funny thing about Peking man is they actually lost his bones. So they found the bones prior to World War II. During World War II, they lost the Peking man's bones. So there's not a whole lot they know about Peking man versus they know more about Java man. But in the evolutionary mindset, he would have been the next step after Java man. And so he would have been just as socially developed as Java man in their minds. But they do know that he had stone tools, made fires, had social behaviors like religion, things like that nature, jobs. So.
Can you go back to the picture? No. Yeah.
That one?
So, that has more features of an African American or an African.
Right, but again,
It's got the big, the larger nose.
the cartilage of your nose isn't
No, but I'm
fossilized.
saying that,
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking, and then you said they come from Africa. Would that fit? I asked why they were Chinese. That's a rendering.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. This is just somebody guessing.
It's a close rendering.
But what I'm saying is they don't know that Peking man looked like this. They just made that drawing to make it look like it's more human than ape to progress the steps of evolution. So it looks like it's a good argument, but they don't know that he looked like that.
I'm just saying, it's
Yeah.
a very good reference.
Because remember, this is what they found. They don't know what the nose looks like. So, and with Peking man, because you see the high bridge.
Yeah.
They would say that that's more ape-like than human-like, so that's why it was an evolutionary step and not humans. But we have humans today that have that skull feature, and it's part of human DNA. that we can display those features. So it's for them to say, oh, that looks more ape-like and not human, is a worldview, not a scientific claim, because they exist today. Like, so. Again, the bone structure of the skulls, the features are still found in humans today. Same with Java Man. And then the next one we're going to get into. So Peking Man doesn't work. We're going to go to Neanderthals. So that's what they would render Neanderthals to look like. This is some of the bone structures that they found in Neanderthals. So Neanderthals were once considered another species, so a step below humans. They would have been on the Homo erectus scale. So, but nowadays, because when they did the human genome, when they checked or found the DNA of humans and mapped it all out, they actually found that it's like 1 to 2% of some humans have Neanderthal DNA in them. So that shows that they breeded with humans, so they understand the Neanderthals to be humans now, but they would still put them at a lower level, like they were the first humans, and not fully human in their mind. But Neanderthal DNA is found within ethnic groups outside of Africa, which is very interesting, because if Africa was where the original humans developed from, the people group that they would have been able to be in contact with would have been Neanderthals. So Neanderthal DNA would have been found in African ethnic groups, but they're not. But it does show that the Neanderthals are humans, because if it's breeding with a human and making babies, it's just like horses. You have a black horse and a brown horse, and they have babies. They're the same species. So it's just funny that. But that's why they had to step them up a rank in the evolutionary line, because they found out that humans interbred with Neanderthals. So they're like, oh, it couldn't have been another species. It had to be of the same species. So Neanderthal doesn't work. This is actually some of the features that we see today in humans. The guy on the left, he is an aboriginist in Australia. They still have that high bridge. They actually have I think it's changed a little bit, but back in the day, they were actually smaller. So they would have a smaller cranium, smaller body. And that's why the Java Man, they thought was ape-like because of their size. They were small, and they had a small skull structure. But the aborigines had similar features as the Java Man. So it's just, again, another feature that humans possess and show. And then the guy on the right, he's actually, if I remember right, he was a mixed martial artist, or a fighter. And yeah. So he later became a politician. So he was a fighter for a while, and now he's a politician somewhere. Paul's going to look him up. But as you can see, he has very much Neanderthal-esque features that are just normal human features that we can show today. So they want to have a story of ape to man, or ape to ape man to man ape, and then man ape to ape, or to man. Say that 10 times fast. So their story goes, Lucy was ape man, and then Java Man would have been man ape, and then Neanderthals would have been a man ape, and then we were man. But when you look at all of the evidence, you really just either have apes or you have man. There's no in-betweens. And I said I picked the best 4 examples they had of the missing links and the fossils that they discovered. There's many fossils that they discovered that later on, after they have this big fanfare, they do the news. We found the next missing link. They put an article in science magazines, and then real other scientists go and look at the findings and see what was actually there. And a lot of times they come back and find the missing links, the so-called missing links that they found would be mixed bones of humans and apes or monkeys. And there was a guy that just found bones in a cave system. I think it's called Dragonback Cave or something like that. And so he went in 4 chambers deep into this cave system. The 4th chamber, he actually had to hire a group of female anthropologists to go in because the opening was so small he couldn't fit in, so they had to get these small women to go in to look into this cave. And they found what he called a burial chamber and said that these were pre-human missing links that would have had possessed fire and were doing burials. But the cave itself was underneath the water table, and there was evidence of flooding. So in prior chambers, they could see where mud was slammed up against the wall, where it had flooded and pushed the mud up against the wall. So, and the bones that were found in the 4th chamber had snail marks on them. So snails are one of the last things that clean off decaying bodies. So, and snails don't live in dark caves; they live in the light. So, and some of the scientists that were on the expedition saw the snail markings on the bone and said, "Your findings aren't right because these bones would have had to been at the front of the cave for these snails to be cleaning off the bone." But he went through, still posted the findings, but because he was a scientist that had already done one of these big, we found the missing link a while ago, and then it went through peer review, and they found out that it was a mix between human and ape bones. The main science magazine wouldn't even post this new finding. He had to post it in a lesser science magazine. But so what had ended up happening was at the entrance of the cave, there was probably a gorilla or a lion or something of that nature. Ended up grabbing a kid and dragged the kid there, ate the kid, and also there was monkey bones and all kinds of other bones in this pile. It flooded, washed down into the cave. Then he went and found these bones and put them all together to make a missing link, and it was mixed bones. And in a lot of the archaeological digs, when they find these bones, they find them in pits where it's mixed bones of pigs and monkeys and humans, and then they try to piece together all these bones to try to find these missing links, but they end up not being able to. Well, they publish it, make a big fanfare about it, and then quietly underneath they get debunked, but they never come back and say, "Oh, this doesn't." So I don't know if you guys remember, but when I grew up in school, we heard about Lucy, we heard about the Neanderthal, and how there's this, step by step, they have all these evidence of the evolution of man from ape to man, but they don't, and they don't ever correct it. They just keep pushing that. After they come out with the first story, they don't come back and say, "Oh, sorry, we were wrong." They just keep pushing that same narrative. So that's just for the human evolution. That's the story that they play or the game they play. So, has anybody got any questions on that? Thoughts? So.
They had to come from somewhere, so where did they come from?
Okay, yeah. So they are humans. So you have Java Man, Peking, and Neanderthals were all humans. So what ended up happening was after the flood, Noah's kids started populating the earth and spreading out. So these would have been, after the flood, they would have just been people groups that were in either China or the, I think it's the Indonesian islands is where Java Man was found. So that's just where it's just human beings that were there, and they just try to make them out as being a missing link or not quite human. And then there was a scientist that went back, so you can see mutations in DNA, and you can see where DNA is connected. So like when you do Ancestry.com, they tell you like, oh, you're 5% Irish, 20% Italian, all that. They can look at the Y chromosome, and they can look at the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. So inside the cells, they can see the Y chromosome and the mitochondria. They can actually trace those back to past generations. And the scientists showed that all of the Y chromosomes that we have came from 3 groups. So the Y chromosome was passed on by the male, and what story has 3 males populating the world? So he traced the Y chromosome back to 3 males. So all major people groups today will have one of those 3 Y chromosome variants. So they were able to take that. And then the mitochondria, they actually brought back to a single female. So they can show that the human race started from a single female. And they can actually take the 3 Y chromosomes and show how that came back from a single Y chromosome. So.
Does the skeleton from Java differ at all from our skeleton?
From our skeleton? So they were smaller. So I think, if I remember correctly, they were like 4 foot something. They had a smaller cranium, so their head size was smaller, and where the size of their brain, the brain cavity area, was smaller than what we would say modern humans are. But there are humans that have those traits, like the Aborigines that tend to be smaller. They have a smaller cranium, and scientists can show that the brain size doesn't necessarily denote intelligence, that you could have a smaller brain and be smart, and have a bigger brain and not be so smart. So all of it falls within the range of human just features, variations that we have today. Go ahead.
The part where you mentioned the wrist bone being bent because of the thought of walking on ground and the neck and whatnot.
Yep.
That was speculated that those bones weren't there.
So you're talking about for Java?
Yeah.
So for Java Man, they would have said he walked upright. He would have had the flat wrist bone. He would have had, they do have feet bones, so they know that they had modern feet, human feet. And the other thing that, because we have computer systems that can like check the physics of things, they've put human feet and ape feet into a computer system to simulate how it would evolve from an 8 feet to a human feet. There's no transition in between an 8 foot and a human foot that is functional. So it shows that there's no way it could have evolved, because there's no intermittent part of that evolution that would be a functioning foot.
And more of a question than a definitive answer, but one of the other things that you noted, through history, just since the Roman times, where we have actual really good documentary evidence, roughly around 60 AD, when a number of plagues swept the earth, through Justinian's time, 540 AD, we know that there were time periods, let's say in the Italian Peninsula, and around the Mediterranean, where there was huge amounts of dearth of resources. People were struggling in areas where there was a lot of resources and people were well fed. People tended to grow taller. They would be more like, say, me and Josh
Right.
level, right? In areas where there were less resources and more strain on populations, they tended to be smaller, thinner, shorter. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory manner, but when people came to America, there was a long time frame where we would joke about it, that the Italians and the Irish, they were short. Everything was,
Right.
they were very short in stature. So by the time you even hit 1900s into 1921, with Michael Connolly, he was considered way above shoulders
Yep.
of most Irishmen of the time, because he was well fed, well taken care of, where others tended to be much shorter and thinner in stature. And I don't say that derogatory, but if you look around just back 200 years around here, you can see evidence of that known in America.
You can see recent evidence of that because in the Chinese population, where most of them live on rice, they tend to be smaller in stature. Who here knows of the famous Chinese football player? Or not football, basketball player. IMP, yeah. He's like, yeah, crazy tall, but because of his diet, the diet of China started to change, he was able to become that. So with Java Man, his small stature and some of the deformities that they found in the bones would actually denote malnutrition. You got to think they were living on an island, which probably was somewhat of a harsh life. And also within that, because they were on an island, they had a small breeding pool, a gene pool. So you would start to get deformities from interbreeding. So that's some of the deformities within Java Man would have been those two factors.
And they saw significant evidence of that in England and in Egypt.
Correct. Yep.
With the interbreeding, it caused smaller
Yeah.
brain, smaller stature, more humped over, different angles.
Yep. And then Ireland is another big one where you see that same thing showing up. But so the one other point that I wanted to get to was, and you were saying not to be like racist or like, but the fact that they push that the human race developed or evolved in Africa, it actually started with a racist mindset because they thought that Africans were a lower step on the evolutionary. They were less human than, or not as superior humans as the white race was. So they assumed that the race developed out of Africa. And when they date a lot of these bones, it actually challenges that mindset. And they find, and actually they did a book, Cambridge made a book of where they cataloged all the different human bones that have been found, human fossils that have been found throughout the years. And it was this big project. Everyone was super excited about it because it was going to prove the evolutionary story. So they were gathering all this information. To this day, you cannot find this book. It was published. You can't go to like a university or like a major city library and find this book. This book is in certain like restricted libraries. And that was done in the 70s. There has never been an update on that book of all the fossils that have been found since. And because if it had proved evolution, they would have been touting that thing everywhere. You'd be learning it in schools today, but they don't have it. So they've actually found evidence of civilizations being outside of Africa that shouldn't be there at the time frame to fit that evolution coming out of Africa, and that Africa was the cradle of of the earth. But so just things to think about. There a lot of times when you hear these stories, even like when they find stuff in space, because I'm a science teacher now, I was watching stuff about science on TikTok and YouTube, and they were like, oh yeah, we just discovered this, which means this, and this. And it's like, you found one evidence, one scientific measured thing, and now they're extrapolating 30 things out of that it's all science. And like, so you anytime you hear a story, especially from like the evolution or naturalist long or deep time scientists, it's really important to see what the evidence actually is, what measurable data they have, and then look and see what they extrapolated from that data that's not provable, but is just a story. So that's what I would end with is, as you're going through and somebody says, oh, they just proved this, take the time. I mean, maybe if you're not that big into it, but take the time to research it and see what actually is the truth of the story and what's storytelling. So, any other questions? Nope. All right. Well, we got about it's 9:45, so we'll just end in prayer. So, dear God, just bless this time, bless the message that we're going to hear in the chapel. the worship. Just enjoy, again, the fellowship that we're going to have, and we just lift this up in your name. Amen.